Hey YouTube, Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Satellarknight Yugioh deck profile for post-Cyberstorm access. We actually got some new Satellarknight support that actually also works with the Constellar deck, but I figured I'd start with the Satellarknights being my more favorite of the two decks. I just like the play style, the fact that you can reuse traps, the many different Xyz monsters. The two are very, very similar with their play styles, but like I said, I'm just more of a fan for its more competitive nature that the Satellarknight deck has had compared to the Constellars. I still plan to do an update to the Constellars with the new support we got from this set as well, with all these cards that count as both being a Satellarknight and a Constellar. It's a line of support of cards. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and start off with the main deck monsters. For some of the new Satellarknight monsters, I run 3 Tellarknight Lyran. Now this card is also treated as a Constellar card, so that's where it comes in handy, with us being able to use some Constellar cards in the deck along with our Satellarknight monsters, and be able to go into the new Xyz monster, Tellarknight Constellar Catechist, being able to use those Constellar monsters to help us with that play also. We can also use our Tellarknight Lyran if a Tellarknight monster and or Constellar monster other than Tellarknight Lyran is normal summoned to your field. You can special summon this card from your hand, and if this card is summoned, you can add 1 Tellarknight spell from your deck to your hand. You go and use each effect of Tellarknight Lyran once per turn. So this card gives you the special summon play, with this card being able to have your setup of this monster on the field, because you have a good number of cards, including the new Tellarknight Constellar Catechist, to just get many different Xyz monsters out onto the field, and being able to add a Tellarknight spell also can give us some search, whether it be for the new Constellar Tellarknight's continuous spell or our go-to Satellarknight Skybridge, being able to have a search option for both of those cards. And very useful for the fact that it does say it's also counted as a Constellar card, but give us a search for a Tellarknight to begin with. I also run the 3 Satellarknight Deneb with this card. If it's summoned, you can add 1 Tellarknight monster from your deck to your hand, except for Satellarknight Deneb. You can use each effect of Satellarknight Deneb once per turn. Another weakness of the deck that we had for a good while was just an easy special summon for our Tellarknight monsters. So giving us a play off of being able to search Lyran to our hand is a big part of Deneb's search, because then we can just go for another summon and then have the Lyran to special summon from our hand on top of all the other plays, giving us an additional search on top of the one that our Deneb already gave us, being able to add that Tellarknight monster, and then also being able to only use this effect once per turn, but still being able to fully utilize it even during our opponent's turn, depending on when we can summon out this card. I also run 3 copies of Satellarknight Altair, being able to special summon a Satellarknight monster from our graveyard. We can grab the Deneb that I spoke of before, or even being able to grab the Tellarknight Lyran, like I said as well. And if it's summoned, just being able to add a Tellarknight spell. That's the search power that Altair can extend with either, targeting Satellarknight Lyran or Satellarknight Deneb with its special summon. For more of the graveyard setup, I also run 3 copies of Satellarknight Unalkahai. When it's summoned, you can send 1 Tellarknight card from your deck to the graveyard, except for Satellarknight Unalkahai. So with this card, you have the option for setting up your other Satellarknight monsters in the graveyard if there's a particular Satellarknight spell you don't want to draw into. Also, you could potentially send that card to the graveyard, so you don't have to risk drawing it. But most of the time, I'm just using this card to set up those monsters that I want in the graveyard for me to use later on. For some of the lower numbers, for the Tellarknight monsters, I run 2 of the new Tellarknight Alteron. Now this is actually, I would say, an evolved form of Satellarknight Altair. With this card, we're still only running 2 though. It's always treated as a Constellar card, just like our previous card, the Tellarknight Lyran. And with this card, if it's summoned, you can target cards on the field up to the number of light and dark Xyz monsters you control, destroy them. And if the Tellarknight monster and or Constellar monster other than Tellarknight Alteron is special summoned to your field, you can special summon this card from your graveyard. Also, you cannot declare an attack for the rest of this turn except with Xyz monsters. So you have a destruction power when it's summoned, depending on how many Xyz monsters you have. And also with that play, if a Tellarknight and or Constellar monster other than our Tellarknight Alteron Alteron is special summoned onto your field. Being able just to special summon this card from our graveyard also gives us another great target just to set up in the graveyard along with our Satellarknight Deneb, being able just to send our Tellarknight Alteron to the graveyard with Satellarknight Unokohai for us to then just special summon back onto the field again and get not only another monster on the field, but a destruction of one of our opponent's cards for every Constellar and Satellarknight or Tellarknight monster we have on the field also. I also run 2 copies of Satellarknight Vega. This card can special summon from the hand another additional Tellarknight monster when this card is summoned. So if you even just summon this card off of your Satellarknight Altair from the graveyard, you can then use your Vega to summon another monster from your hand onto the field, and then you have the 3 monsters needed to go into your Xyz summon for any of your Tellarknight monsters from the extra deck. And for the one-ofs for the Satellarknight monsters, 1 Awesome and 1 Satellarknight Sirius. The Sirius for the recycle power, being able to shuffle back 5 Tellarknight monsters in our graveyard into the deck and draw 1 card. We can even shuffle back some of our extra deck monsters back into the extra deck and not take up any of the cards we put back into the actual main deck and still being able to draw a card. And then Satellarknight Awesome, when it's summoned, you can inflict 1,000 points of damage to your opponent. So it helps in the time scenario if you just summon out this card and burn your opponent for 1,000 points of damage. Now, with the cards sharing the name for some of the Constellar cards as well, I am running a small Constellar engine that does help with the deck just with some of the search power, and then we can use the Constellar monsters to go into some of the Link monsters along with the other monsters that are in the deck, or just to assist with some of the engine that we can search out with these monsters. One of the monsters being our Constellar Sheraton. When this card is normal summon, you can add 1 Constellar monster from your deck to your hand. So with our Constellar Sheraton, it says you can add a Constellar monster from your deck to your hand. So we do have the targets of our Tellarknight Lyran and our Tellarknight Alteron being able to be added off of our Constellar Sheraton, since they are considered Constellar monsters as well as Tellarknight monsters, giving us an easier access to those monsters using our Constellar Sheraton. You also have the other search option of our Constellar Catechus. With this card, if you control a Constellar monster except for Constellar Catechus, you can special summon this card from your hand, and during your main phase, you can add 1 Constellar Spell or Trap from your deck to your hand. You can use each of the previous effects of Constellar Catechus once per turn, and a Constellar Xyz monster that has this card as material gains the effect. If it battles light or dark monster before damage calc, you can banish that monster. We do run some Constellar monsters in the deck, so there is a chance that you could use this card to go into those monsters with one of our spells, being the searchable card that you can get off of your Constellar Catechus as well, being our Constellar Tellarknights, which is a rank up continuous spell, being able to use our different Tellarknight monsters to go into different ranked Constellar monsters we run in the extra deck as well. And with this card, if you control a Constellar monster, you can even just summon out Constellar Sheraton if you wish, and then add Catechus, and then special summon the Catechus onto the field and get the search there, and then have a Link 2 monster to go into using our other cards for the search power. For the rest of the main deck monsters, I also run 2 copies of Photon Thrasher. Now, with this card, you have the additional monster to summon on the field because our new Tellarknight Constellar Catechus just needs 2 or more level 4 monsters. So if you can special summon out an additional Photon Thrasher onto the field, it's just an additional monster that you can use for the overlay plays. We also have some other generic monsters like Satellarknight Deltaros, just needing 3 level 4 monsters. Nothing specific for the Tellarknight. Same with Tellarknight Ptolemaeus, depending on what you want to go for the overlay play. Our Photon Thrasher, just if, it's special summon while you control no monsters. So before we even begin our actual Tellarknight plays, our Photon Thrasher can just take the place on the field and be that 1 additional monster for our Xyz summons. Moving on now to the spells, I run 2 of the new Constellar Tellarknights. When this card's activated, you can special summon 1 Tellarknight or Constellar monster from your hand or graveyard. You can target 1 Tellarknight or Constellar Xyz monster you control, special summon from your extra deck 1 Tellarknight or Constellar Xyz monster with a different rank from that monster you control by using it as material. It's treated as an Xyz summon and transfer its materials to the summon monster. You can only use this effect of Tellarknight Constellar once per turn, and you can only activate 1 Tellarknight Constellar per turn. So you have the special summon option. What's great about Constellar Tellarknights is it is a continuous spell. So if you activate it and then go into cards like our Stellar Knight Traver, you can use Traver to bounce the Constellar Tellarknights back to our hand to then reactivate on a different turn, giving you an additional special summon of a Tellarknight or Constellar monster from your hand or graveyard. I also run the 2 copies of Satellarknight Skybridge for the tag out option of having a Constellar on the field. So let's say you go for the Deneb summon. Then you can get your search of the Satellarknight monster you want, activating your Sky Bridge to then special summon out a different Satellarknight monster from your deck, shuffling back the Deneb and special summoning the one from the hand using our Vega, and then getting the additional searches for it to be able to add a Satellarknight spell. So then you can add our Constellar Satellarknights off of the Lyran onto the field. And then for the rest of the spells, one copy of Monster Reborn, one copy of Reinforcements of the Army, and one Call by the Grave for more of the generic lineup that also just help with the search power that Reinforcements can provide, special summon, and graveyard shutdown of our opponents. Moving on now to the traps. We do run a pretty good trap lineup just because of the recycle power, once again, of cards like Satellarknight or Stellarknight Trevor. So 3 copies of Stellar Nova Alpha. When a spell, trap, or monster effect is activated, send one face-up Satellarknight monster you control to the graveyard, negate the activation. If you do destroy that card, then draw 1 card. So not only will it stop one of your opponent's cards, you can set up one of your Satellarknight monsters in the graveyard for you to resummon out onto the field again, but also giving you a draw to make up for the card that you got rid of on the field as well. I also run 3 copies of Fiendish Chain. Now, I chose this card over the Infinite Impermanence in the deck because, once again, this card can be activated, negating an opponent's monster effect, and then you can summon out your Stellarknight Trevor onto the field, bouncing all cards on the field, and then being able to set and reactivate the Fiendish Chain and use it over again. With the last of the traps in the main deck being 3 copies of Crackdown. It's the same premise. You can take your opponent's monsters with this card, and while you control that monster, it cannot attack or activate its effects, and when it leaves the field, destroy this card. But if you bounce Crackdown back to your hand, you can keep that monster still for that play if you used it for an Xyz summon, and then reuse the Crackdown again to take another one of your opponent's monsters. And that is it for the main deck. We'll now move on to the extra deck. I run 2 copies of the new Tellarknight Constellar Catechist. You need 2 or more level 4 monsters. If it's Xyz summon, you can target 1 Tellarknight card and or 1 Constellar card in your graveyard, add them to your hand, and you can banish 1 Tellarknight or Constellar monster from your hand or deck, then detach 1 material from this card. This effect becomes that banish monster's activated effect, and when that monster is normal summon, you can only use each effect of Tellarknight Constellar Catechist once per turn. So you have all of these search options thanks to your Tellarknight Constellar Catechist, being able even just to banish our Constellar Sheraton, like I mentioned before, to gain the effect of it when it's normal summon, just to add a Constellar monster from our deck to our hand. So that gives us the search for our either of the new Tellarknight monsters, since they also count as Constellar monsters, using the card from our deck after the banish of this card. You have that setup for this card, and also just being able to give you back those resources for the Tellarknight and Constellar monster when this card is summoned out onto the field also. I also run the 2 copies of Dark Tellarknight Battlemaeus. Now this card for a just option for the detach 1 from this card and discard 1 to special summon out another Tellarknight monster over this card and then transfer the materials onto it as well. It helps because you only need 2 level 4 monsters to summon out this card, while cards like Stellarknight Trevor and Stellarknight Deltaros need 3 monsters. So if you can only go for the 2, you can rely on Dark Tellarknight Battlemaeus to summon out and then just discard an additional card and detach 1 from this to go into those other rank 4 monsters. The 2 copies of the Stellarknight Trevor for the bounce power, and then once you also bounce all cards on the field when it's summoned by an Xyz summon, you can detach 1 from this card to discard a random card from your opponent's hand, taking away from their hand resources, or even if you can make Trevor on your first turn, you can take away a card before your opponent even had a chance to have their turn by using this card to its full potential. I also run the 2 copies of Stellarknight Constellar Diamond. Not only does it have Constellar in the name as well, so you have the play for both of this card to go into the rank up summon. You can also just go for this card using your new continuous spell, Constellar Tellarknights, because this card normally can only be Xyz summoned during the main phase 2, but you can use that spell card to rank up into this card using your other monsters much more quickly now, thanks to that continuous spell. For the rest of the Xyz monsters, 1 copy of Stellarknight Deltaros, 1 of the Tellarknight Ptolemaeus, and for the Constellar monsters, I run 1 copy of Constellar Hyades. Now, with this card, you have the Sheraton as an option for the overlay into this card, but you also just have the play to potentially summon out with your monster with a different rank. So with Constellar Tellarknights, it doesn't have to be a higher rank, it just has to be a different rank than the monsters you have. So with the rank for monsters you have for the majority of your Satellarknight monsters, you can go into your Constellar Hyades, or you can go into your Constellar Pleiades, or your Constellar Ptolemy M7, being all the different ranks than the rank for Satellarknight monsters we run, and being able to go into them with our continuous spell. And then for the Link monsters, I run one copy of Hit Potion Engen, and the one Isolde for the Search Power, and the Power Boost for our light attribute monsters on the field. As for some of the go-to plays, I mentioned a lot of them during the actual video, but for that setup, it all comes down to just that search power, being our new Xyz monster as well, our Satellarknight Constellar Catechus. If you can summon this card out, being able to target a Satellarknight card and or one Constellar in your graveyard, add them to your hand. If you don't go for the add, you also have the option for its second effect. So just for the more generic play, let's say you go for the summon of your Constellarknight Vega, and then you have your Uno Kohai in your hand as well. You can summon out the Uno Kohai off of your Vega. You can then use the Satellarknight Uno Kohai to then send to the graveyard your play off of your new Constellar Alteron. So you can send your Alteron to the graveyard off of your Uno Kohai. Then you can overlay the two together to go into your Constellarknight Catechus, Satellarknight Constellar Catechus. If it's Xyz summon, being able to target the Alteron that you just sent to the graveyard with this card and add it to your hand. And then also being able to use the play to have the banish of being able to use the Constellar Catechus. So you can detach the one material off of this card and then banish the Sheraton from your deck, then using its normal summon effect to add a Constellar monster from your deck to your hand. So you can add the Constellar Catechus, and then with this play, you do control the Constellar monster on the field to summon out your Constellar Catechus onto the field, and then being able to add a Constellar spell when you summon out the Catechus. Then this spell that you can summon off of this is your Constellar Satellarknights. When it's activated, being able to special summon one from your hand or graveyard, you can summon out the Alteron, and then with that you have a pop of a card on your field and an additional overlay to go into with your two monsters, just needing the two to overlay into your level or rank 4 Xyz monster of choice from your extra deck with this card, depending on what you may want to go for that summon. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. Once I took a look at all the new support, I was definitely happy with how you could meld some of the Constellar cards with the Satellarknight support to go with the new Xyz monsters and new main deck monsters that we run. And I hope you all enjoyed it as well. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And Kira Twig out.